Hey guys, it's Wes with Dirt Concepts. Today we're going to talk through all the things that I know about how to get your 17.5 2WD Buggy ripping on the track. So we'll talk through all the speed secrets. Let's get started. First thing we'll talk through is 17.5 turn motors and what you can do to get the highest level of performance out of your 17.5 motor program. Alright, first thing is you want to make sure you have a current roar-approved 17.5 motor. What I do recommend is the Hobbywing G4R 17.5. You can see it has the roar approval on there. This motor rips, and I think it's a great option for anybody looking to run 17.5 two-wheel drive buggy. Second thing is you want to tune your motor to the recommended manufacturer specifications, and what I would do is actually just reach out to the manufacturer of your motor, and they can tell you for your application how you want to set the timing on the can of your motor. In the case of the Hobbywing G4R 17.5, I set it at 48 degrees in the can for two-wheel drive buggy, 17.5 applications on carpet. Next thing is check your shimming on your motor. So here's an example with the, this is a 7.5 turn, but same idea. You want to go ahead and shim the rotor on this motor, and there's little shims you can see if you take it apart. You want to shim your rotor to be as close as possible to the timing board, and you want to have about a 0.5 millimeter of play if you pull on the rotor while the motor's assembled and rock it back and forth. You can tell, so shoot for about a 0.5 millimeter of play. That accounts for any heat expansion within the electric motor. The next thing you want to do is take your motor and put it on a tuning analyzer for brushless motors, and it can actually tell you what your timing is. And ideally you want a motor that's going to have as close as possible timing degrees on each different pole, so it's poles A, B, and C. The next thing is install high torque rotor. So here's an example of a high torque rotor from Hobbywing. This is for the G4R. So this is great for two-wheel drive buggy applications and even stadium truck spec classes as well. The next thing is you want to make sure that you are adamant about your maintenance and cleaning intervals for your electric motors. So I would say if you race on dirt, maybe once every 4 races, go ahead and pull the motor out, take it apart completely, remove the bearings, clean it really well with a electrical motor spray or cleaner, and then once you're done, reassemble the motor and go ahead and put some high quality ultra lightweight racing oil in your motor bearings. That's really important for carpet applications. It's usually about the same interval, maybe a little bit longer. I would go ahead and put some oil in the bearings about once every, let's say, 3 to 4 races, just to be sure. Another thing you can do is actually install aluminum or titanium motor screws or timing board screws in the end belt of your spec motor. Steel screws tend to interact with the magnetic field of the stator, and it actually can limit the top level RPM of your motor. So if you put it on the dyno, you'll see the difference. It's usually about another 200 or 300 more RPMs you get out of the motor when you put the titanium or aluminum screws in there. Another thing you can do is install NMB or ceramic bearings in your motor if they are available. Those are going to give you anywhere from, let's say, 200 to maybe 300 more RPMs, and that's in addition to using the lightweight non-ferrous aluminum or titanium motor screws. And lastly, often overlooked but very important, a high quality 30 millimeter aluminum motor fan for your buggy. This is important because you got to keep the motor cool so that the power doesn't fade throughout the run as the motor builds heat in it. One specific fan that I would recommend is the Protect fans. They're priced very reasonable and they work very well. They're very durable, they don't break. Alright, the next topic we're going to cover are electronic speed controls and some of the tips and tricks you can do to get the highest level of performance out of your speed control. First things first, you want to select an ESC that is a current model, and ideally, it's also applied for stock applications. So in this case, we have my preferred and recommended speed control is the Hobbywing G3X, which actually we just released recently from Hobbywing. This is an excellent speed control. It's got a ton of power and a ton of different adjustable parameters. Yes, it is a little pricey, but you kind of pay for what you get, and going fast, as they say, it is not cheap. You also want to get a good programmer box. In this case, Hobbywing has their new, this is the G3 Pro program box, and it is compatible with all the current Hobbywing ESCs. It's also Bluetooth, which is really nice, so you can still use your phone to do the programming, or you can use the actual box. Now that you have your ESC and your program box, you want to go ahead and get on Hobbywing's website and find a ESC calibration that's going to work best for your application. So you want to find one that's for 17.5 2WD Drive Buggy, and there's a big difference between the ESC setups that you'll see for dirt and like carpet, for example. So make sure you find one that's for the racing application that you're going to use it for. Next, we'll talk about wiring. So it's really important for stock applications. Ideally, you want to use 12 gauge wire. The reason for this is the thicker gauge wire offers a lower resistance compared to like a 13 gauge wire, which is lighter weight. So yes, the 12 gauge does weigh a little bit more, but the lower resistance gives you more power, and that is really what you're looking for in any kind of spec class. Next up, make sure that you appropriately size the length of your wires. So you want to cut them relatively short. Typically a shorter wire is going to have a lower resistance. Next, we'll talk through soldering. So you want to make sure you solder correctly, and to do that I recommend getting a adjustable soldering iron and get some high quality racing solder. 1UP Racing actually has a really nice solder. That's where I get mine, so I recommend going to there. It's a rosin based solder. You also want to get a liquid flux. I feel like with a liquid flux it tends to penetrate the wires a little better, and it gives you just a better overall solder joint in the end. When you're soldering, you want to make sure that your adjustable soldering iron can go up to 850 degrees. Some of the Speedos that come from the factory, like the Hobbywings for example, it's got some pretty stubborn solder on there, and you really have to get it pretty hot in order to melt it. So I think it's just nice to have the soldering iron that can go pretty hot. That said, you know, when you're doing a solder joint, you want to use a low temperature. So typically when I'm, you know, soldering, I'm usually using around 600 to 625 degrees, and it makes that solder joint have that really nice kind of bubble look to it, and also it keeps your wires nice and flexible, so you're not kind of cooking the cables in the process of soldering. So the adjustable temp is really key to this. And last but not least, something really important is make sure that you always check your calibration to ensure that you're getting 100% throttle and brake. I see this time and time again where, you know, guys aren't checking their calibration of their Speedo, and they wonder why they're down on power. And really, this is something I just check occasionally. It's pretty easy to do. You want to make sure your endpoints are set at 100% before you go through that process. Then follow the manual in your ESC, and it'll tell you how to complete that calibration procedure. Next, we're going to talk through chassis upgrades and some optional parts you can get in order to improve the overall performance of your two-wheel drive buggy in stock classes. First up is bearings. So for spec classes, what I do recommend is get a high quality set of NMB or ceramic bearings. They do actually make an enormous difference in the performance of your vehicle, as well as the amount of heat that it may build up throughout the duration of a run. For dirt applications, I recommend getting rubber sealed bearings just to keep the dirt out of your expensive ceramic or NMB bearings. For carpet, you can go ahead and use NMB bearings. If you want to do a mix, you can do that as well. So like internally in the transmission, you could do metal shielded bearings, and then on your outside hubs and on your rear diff, you could do the rubber sealed bearings. It's really important when you do this that you are checking, you're cleaning, and you're lubing your bearings often. If you go with ceramic, with NMBs, you have a little bit more leeway on that. I would just wipe them down and maybe give them a drop of oil every, you know, let's say 2, 3, 4 track days, and you can kind of get a feel for that based on your brand of bearing. The next thing is you want to ensure that your buggy's at or close to the ROAR minimum weight, which is 1,474 grams for two-wheel drive buggies. How you achieve that is, unfortunately, you can look at expensive titanium and carbon fiber upgrades, or you can look at lighter weight electronics, and that certainly helps as well. In this case, on my Mugen MSB1, you can see that I have the titanium screws on there, as well as other titanium things like titanium ball studs, you know, titanium turnbuckles, and aluminum lock nuts, you know, all that different stuff like that, it adds up and it reduces quite a bit of weight off the vehicle. You can also do a lightweight body as well. Just keep in mind they are more prone to cracking. They're not as durable, but they do save anywhere from 10 to 12 grams usually. Another thing you can do is install a direct drive kit or like a slipper eliminator on your stock buggy. This makes a huge difference in the overall power delivery. You have zero slip at all, as well as it's less rotating mass. It saves quite a bit of weight. So something to look at. I know for Mugen they call them a direct drive kit. For other brands they may call them a slipper eliminator. So check it out, pick one up for yourself. I do not recommend using a slipper eliminator or a direct drive kit for anything other than high bite applications. So you could use this for like glued clay or sealed clay. You could also use it for carpet applications. For like outdoor loose dirt, I would probably still stick with the slipper clutch. It's going to be really beneficial for you to be able to put your power down. Last thing, ensure you have a lightweight pinion gear. So for lower grip applications, you can actually use one of the plastic pinion gears. It's like a nylon type of pinion gear. For everything else though, I do recommend getting a lightweight aluminum pinion gear. ProTech RC has a really nice lineup of very reasonably priced lightweight aluminum pinion gears. So check them out, they're on A-Main Hobby's website. So a couple other tips as well is related to the chassis and drivetrain. Specific for the Mugen MSB1, they just came out with a V2 internal gear set, both for ball diffs and for gear diffs. And what they did is they basically increased the total mesh basically in the gears, so the drivetrain spins very freely, and it's actually very noticeable on the track. Not only that, the buggy's a little bit quieter on the track too. Another thing you can do is install an MIP puck kit or one of the other similar type of puck kits. The whole idea is that it's bimetal, or it's made of like lightweight aluminum drives instead of steel, and it saves quite a bit of weight. There's also other lightweight drivetrain things like for other brands, such as like a lightweight ball diff. They have cut gears as well, so you could look into that. Any of those type of items, they save a lot of weight on the rotating mass, and it's a very noticeable improvement on the track. And lastly, this one's really easy and it's free. For gear diff applications like on carpet or maybe sealed clay, you can actually remove two of the spider gears inside of the gear diff, and it saves quite a bit of weight in rotating mass, and just run 2 gear with a higher diff oil viscosity. Alright, last topic we're going to discuss is batteries and chargers and what you can do to get the most amount of performance out of the equipment that you have. Alright, starting at the top, first thing you want to do is you want to get a high quality, very adjustable digital charger. So I like the iChargers just because they give you the ability to do different charging curves, a variety of different types of battery chemistries, as well as it has a very adjustable amperage rate that you're charging your battery or discharging. Next thing, any of these type of iCharger chargers, you're going to need an external power supply. I use a Phantom 12-volt power supply. You also want to have an external discharging bank. There's a lot of different brands that make these. This one's by RL Power, and it plugs into the second channel of the iCharger. The next thing you want to do is ensure that you have a high quality, high performance battery that has the correct size that you're looking for. A 4800 milliamp hour battery is kind of the standard, or right around that is the standard for two-wheel drive buggy. You can run a higher milliamp hour battery. You will notice a little bit more punch, especially through the duration of a run. If it's like 8-minute run, for example, a 6400 will have a little bit more punch at the tail end of the run. On the flip side, they're a lot heavier though, so I think the 4800 is kind of a nice blend of that at about 170 grams. So definitely check them out. This one's a ProTech RC. I really like these. They have low IRs. In total, you get a brand new pack, they're always going to be sub 2 ohms, always. I mean, sometimes you get them and they're under sub 1 ohm, so these are very high quality, very strong packs. And that's one thing you want to check for when you're charging with your iCharger. It'll have the internal resistance reading on that battery. When you start to get above 2 ohms total for the battery pack, that's when you'll start to see a degradation of total power from your battery. When you're charging your batteries, it's really important that you want to get the batteries nice and warm. The warmer they are, it lowers the IR. How you can do that is by first discharging the battery down to 3.8 volts per cell at 30 amps using the discharger bank. And then immediately go and charge it at 30 amps up to your finished charge voltage, which in this case I would recommend anywhere from 4.22 to 4.24 per cell. The reason for that is, well, 4.2 is the acceptable max if you go through tech for any stock class at any big race. So remember though, when you charge, there's always a voltage drop after you finish charging. So that's why I say 4.22 to 4.24, because the voltage will then drop and settle down to 4.20 per cell. It's important though, before you commit to that, make sure that you get with your tech inspector and go ahead and test on their equipment, because every piece of equipment's a little bit different, and you want to make sure that you hit the target with their equipment by the time you get up there, that your cells are right at 4.20 volts per cell. And lastly, this one's often overlooked by a lot of people. I think especially in dirt applications, this is really important. You want to make sure that you clean out the inside of your battery terminals with a Q-tip and some isopropyl alcohol occasionally. It just ensures that your battery plug has a nice positive connection in that terminal. You also want to make sure that this has a very snug fit, so it's not going to rotate around, it's not going to come loose with a hard landing, and ensures that you're getting minimal resistance out of that connection. Alright, that wraps that one up today. 17.5 2-wheel drive buggy speed secrets. If you guys have any questions, you can drop a comment below, and I really appreciate the watch. If you are not currently a subscriber, please subscribe to my channel. All that really helps me out. And also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. That helps it get into the algorithm, and it helps me out, and it's also motivating for me to make more of these type of videos for you. So anyway, I appreciate the watch, and I'll see you on the next one.